One thing I want to talk about um, is something that's hard for my mind to convince my mind, even still, is that God supports me fully. You know what I mean? Over the psychopaths, basically, of what I figured out were psychopaths. you know that God supports me just as much as them, or you know what I mean? Like, it's been hard for me to convince my brain that God's on my side just as much as he was on their side. You know what I mean? Because it didn't seem like that. It was pretty lopsided against me. I think God knows that. I'm just like, I was clearly the oppressed underdog. Clearly, you know what I mean? That didn't seem like God was on his side at all. You know what I mean? That's why it's been so hard to convince me now, even still, that God is on my side, supporting me fully. Like, no bullshit, no joking around. He supports me fully, 100%. It's been hard for my brain to believe it. And that's what I want to say for this video. 100%. It's been hard for me to convince myself. I'm not convinced. Still, I'm like, the God will betray me eventually. You know what I mean? He will. That's what I think. I still think that, based on my upbringing, how lopsided it was. You know what I mean? It seemed like God was on their side, the side of the psychopaths and religion against me. That's what I thought, because that's what I lived. I lived it, you know what I mean? So it's hard to convince my brain that God fully supports me, you know what I mean? The real Jesus fully supports me now, 100%. It's hard to convince myself, you know what I mean? That he won't abandon me, betray me, like the people of the world would, you know what I mean? It's hard to still convince me of that. It is. And it's clear in my videos. I'm like, yeah, God will leave me hanging. You know what I mean? It's clear that I still believe that God will leave me hanging, basically. The support he's given me will stop, basically. Like a psychopath removing their love from you, basically. That's what I feel God will do. I'm not making it up either. So I'm pretty honest, you know what I mean? So it's been hard to fully convince myself that God supports me 100%. It's been so hard to convince me. My brain. It has been, you know what I mean? Like, no joking around. It's been so hard to convince myself that God supports me fully, 100%. You know what I mean? From this point forward, for the rest of my life, God supports me 100%. It's hard to convince myself of that. It is. And I live like he won't support me the full way. You know what I mean? Keep backing me up. You know what I mean? I live that way. I don't fully believe it. And I think people know that out there. I don't fully believe it. I'm very hesitant, very tentative about it. You know what I mean? Because point blank, the God growing up in that household, he was not on my side. In my opinion, growing up in that household, God was not on my side at all. And my family can attest to that as well. My family, if you were to ask them, even though they are psychopaths, my parents are. If you were to ask them, they would say, like, even they would say, like, yeah, it didn't seem like God supported my son. They would say it straight up. And one of the last things my father said before I walked away from the family, one of the last things he said to me was like, I know you're very disappointed in God. No bullshit. Even he knew. that I was disappointed in God. That's what this is about, you know. I lived like I was disappointed in God most of my life because I was disappointed in God everything, you know what I mean? That's heavy, you know what I mean? The creator of me and the whole universe, just a single boy, was disappointed in God. Even to this day, still kind of disappointed. That's pretty insane. A boy held more weight of being disappointed with God. A boy, me, was disappointed in God. That's heavy. Because, it's no bullshit. I was disappointed. Like, I had higher morals as a kid. I had higher morals than God. That's what I thought based on what I lived through. I had higher morals, more integrity. No bullshit. So it's been hard to convince my brain otherwise, that God has higher morals than me. God has more integrity than me. God is more good than me. God is more honorable than me. It's hard to convince myself of that. To believe it, to keep going forward with confidence. No bullshit. To convince myself God is better than me in all these areas, it's been hard to convince myself fully. To give me the full confidence in God from here forward. Full confidence. It's been hard to convince my brain of that. It has been. Like, all the memories of the past keep getting in my mind. Like, shit. You know what I mean? It does. It gets in the way. I'm like, man, will God let me down like he did back then at this time? Will he let me down like he did at this time? Will God let me down like he did at this time? I can recall all these memories. I can. God knows it as well. I can recall all these times. I'm like, man, I kind of got fucked in this situation. I kind of got fucked in this situation. I kind of got fucked in this situation. I can go back and recall all that. God knows it. So anyways, that's been the toughest challenge for me, is to convince my brain that God is a better person than anybody on the ground, even me. More integrity, more righteous. It's been hard to convince my brain of that based on what I lived through. It's so hard to convince my brain of that. It is. It's like it's the hardest thing to convince myself of. I could be in counseling about this forever, and it would still be hard for my brain to convince me that God is good and he fully supports me, no matter what. It's that heavy. It is. It's crazy. That's what I thought about today. It's like the hardest thing to convince my brain of. It is. 100%. It is. Because I don't fully live like God has my back fully. I don't. There's a little hesitancy in my step, in my walk. I don't live like I have full confidence in God, 100%. And God knows it. I don't. I don't have the full wind in my sails of God. You know what I mean? I don't strut around. I don't walk around like I have 100% confidence in God. I don't. I don't. Like, God has my back all the time, no matter what. I don't walk around like that. There's still a part of me that thinks he'll let me down. There's still that part of me. That part of me that was let down back in the day is still in my body. You know what I mean? That's what I'll say. The part of me that was let down by God in the past still remains in my body. From back then, I can recall it. You know what I mean? I'm like, shit. That's what deflates me. You know what I mean? So if you're disappointed in God most of your life, that's pretty heavy. If you're just a human, and you're disappointed in God like you have higher morals. That's heavy. That's the task God has. He has to prove he has higher morals than me, more honorable than me. You know what I mean? He does. Even more honest than me. How honest I am in videos. God has to prove he's more honest than me. He does. He has to prove that God cannot lie. That phrase, he has to prove it to me. He does. He has to prove that he cannot lie. That's what's at stake here. It is. People don't know that. I was told something from God, and he cannot lie. It's heavy. He has to deliver, because he cannot lie. Even more so than me not lying. You know what I mean? Because I think he designed me to struggle to lie. He designed me to struggle to actually lie. So, like, I think he gave me that honesty or something. But that's why this is interesting. I have to believe God is more honest than I am, and deliver on something that I was told back in the day. He cannot lie. He has to deliver. Has to. Somehow, some way, he has to deliver. He does. God cannot lie. You know what I mean? He has to back up that phrase, you know. To someone that didn't think God could do anything most of his life. The most disappointed person in God, God has to, like, deliver for. Huge task. Big task. Monumental task. You know what I mean? For God, for sure. You know what I mean? So, anyway. That's what I want to say for this video, man. It's been hard to really convince my brain. It has. That God fully supports me 100%. Has my back no matter what. You know. He supports me more than he does my family of origin, basically. It's hard for me to convince my brain that he supports me more than them. Or even the same as them. Because that's not what I lived through or witnessed. What I lived through and witnessed. God supported my family of origin clearly more than me, 100%. And my family of origin would agree with me. They would agree with me that they were blessed and looked over by God more than I was. 100%. 100%. They would agree. Like, no bullshit. They're like, where was God for my son? Where was he for him? That's what they would say. You know what I mean? Even still, you know. So it's been interesting. That's why I say God himself had to walk my entire life. He had to live my entire life to be able to see the future, to see that he could deliver on stuff. You know what I mean? He would know my future so well that it would change me. You know what I mean? To try to follow God more, basically. You know what I mean? If that makes sense. But anyways, that's why it's been so hard to, you know, have full confidence. Like, full confidence, you know? I tried to heal my blind neighbor again, so maybe that did something. With more confidence, I said, I heal you of your blindness with full confidence. You know, so Marvin said, do not give up on that, so I'm not. So anyway, but that's why this has been interesting. It's been hard for me to convince my brain that God supports me just as much as he supported my family of origin. It's been hard to convince my brain that he even supports me the same as them. Because it seemed like he supported them clearly more than he supported me in my life. And my family of origin would agree 100%. 100%. They would agree that they were supported by God and favored by God more than God favored me. They would agree with that. If you were to ask them right now, wherever they are, if you were to ask them, my family of origin, anybody in my family of origin, if God favored them over me, they would say yes. 100%. God did not favor me over them, they would say. That's why it's been so hard to convince myself, even still, that God favors me just as much as he favored them. Basically, the Cinderella of the family he's supporting now, fully. He's trying to convince the Cinderella person. Treated like Cinderella, you know. For real, you know what I mean? Like Cinderella Man. Like that movie, Cinderella Man. It's a lot like that, you know. Disappointed in God to the point he wouldn't even pray to God. He's prayed out. I know exactly how that feels. You know, totally broke in the depression. You know, he's like, I'm prayed out. Totally broke with a broken hand. He's like, I'm prayed out. I know exactly how that feels. Like, exactly. Like, no joke. So, anyways, that's what's been interesting. Because it's been hard to convince myself. It has. That God fully supports me still, 100%, from this point forward. Just as much as he supported my family of origin for most of my life. It's been hard as hell to convince my brain of that. That he supports me just as much as he supported psychopaths, basically, that I've learned they are. That he supports me just as much as them. Because it didn't seem like that. It was very lopsided. It was very lopsided. You know? Very lopsided. 100%. They ran me over, ran circles around me. You know? God favored them. 100%. At least it seemed like it, you know? That's what kind of deflated me. I'm like, God favors them over me, clearly. He clearly favors them over me. And even the famous people of the world, it seemed like he favored them over me. Everybody seemed favored over me by God. I'm not even joking. That's what I felt like, witnessed. My perspective. It's not a joke. So that's why it's so hard to convince my brain otherwise. It's been so hard because most of my life I did not experience that, or, you know what I mean? Or, you know, live that. I did not witness that. I'm almost like, okay, God, you know, let's get back to what it used to be, you know. Let's get back to what it used to be. You favoring everybody else instead of me. Let's get back to that reality. This is kind of weird. You're favoring me now, or helping me now still. It's kind of weird now. No joke. I'm like, this is kind of weird. God's favoring me. This ain't right. He's helping me just as much as he's helped them. This ain't right. That's not what I felt like most of my life. That's not what I witnessed most of my life. Like, let's go back to the way things were, God, when you favored everybody instead of me. You know what I mean? But anyways, that's just something that hit me just now. Pretty hard. I'm like, it's been so hard to convince myself, to convince me fully, 100%, like no ifs, ands, or buts about it, that God supports me 100% fully from this point forward. It's been so hard to convince my brain of that. It's not even funny. It's like no human on the ground can convince me of that. You know what I mean? That God favors and supports me 100%. No human on the ground right now could convince me of that. So it's interesting. Marvin's kind of convincing me a little bit. But that's it, you know. So it's been interesting. For sure. For sure. But God knows I'm not used to a road like God is helping me 100%. I'm not used to this kind of a road. He knows it. It feels weird. You know what I mean? Things going my way. You know, always. You know, it feels weird. You know, like when is this gonna crash? You know, basically. That's what I'm saying. But that's all I'm saying. That's the main thing I wanted to say in a video. It's been hard to convince my brain because I don't live like God supports me 100%. I don't live like that. I don't. The memories of the past always get to me. They always get to me. They're my downfall. I'm like, I can review the whole past. I'm like, God clearly favored them over me. Clearly. My brain remembers that. It remembers that completely. Like God favored everybody else except for me. It remembers that like it's yesterday. You know what I mean? But anyways, that's all I'll say. Hopefully today is good. Good day for me. Good work day for me. But anyways, I felt like I really had to make